here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
This is Ben Shapiro, in for the great one, Mark Levin. Wow, honor of a lifetime to be sitting in this seat. Really, my name is Ben Shapiro. I am the editor-in-chief of Daily Wire, host of The Ben Shapiro Show. You can find that on iTunes or SoundCloud. And Mark has been a lifelong idol for me. I mean, the most honest man in American politics, and it's an honor to sit in this seat. Well, tons to get to here today, here on the Mark Levin Show. And I can't wait to get to all of it, everything Russia-related, everything Democrat-related, and the question of the day, will Republicans stand up if Donald Trump does the wrong thing? Because intellectual honesty is prized here. And we want Donald Trump to do all the right things. We don't want Republicans to be in a position where they have to stop Donald Trump. But if the pedal hits the metal, if Donald Trump decides to push bad policy, what will Republicans do? We'll get to all of that. But we begin today with the fact that Democrats seem determined to lose the 2020 race long before it even begins. The figures they trotted out in 2016 are truly so egregious, just so offensive to the normal American, that most Americans responded to that by saying there is no way on earth I would put these people anywhere near the levers of power. And that's why you have this historic Republican victory all across the country. It's why you have 2/3 of state houses held by Republicans. It's why you have 32 governorships held by Republicans. It's why you have a majority in the House, a majority in the Senate, the presidency of the United States, all held by Republicans. And it's because the cultural left has so disgusted Americans that Americans decided, well, it's time to fight back. Enough is enough. We're not going to do this anymore. And the left, they just can't help themselves. They just can't help themselves. Today's story of horror comes courtesy of Lena Dunham. Now, I know most of you have never heard of Lena Dunham. That's because you have lives, you have families, you have children, you have jobs. You don't spend your days living in your parents' basement, smoking pot, and viewing the latest offering from HBO. That's not what you do. Nobody actually watches this gal's show. Her name is Lena Dunham. Her show is the show Girls. And nobody's ever seen this show. It's sort of a mythical show. It lives in unicorn land. No one's ever seen it. We sort of heard of it, but nobody's seen it. It's only on magazine covers. It's never actually appeared on TV. This show reaches an enormous number of people, more than Lena Dunham's show has ever reached, for sure. But Lena Dunham, for some reason, is just worshipped on the left. And she's this delusional young woman who strongly resembles in both aspect and mind a russet potato, a peeled russet potato. And she has become just this darling of the DNC. And you remember that at the DNC in 2016, Lena Dunham, the creator of the show Girls, who bragged in her memoirs about sexually abusing her sister, that Lena Dunham actually spoke at the DNC for Hillary Clinton. And here is what she said at the DNC, and then we'll get to why she's relevant. This is cut 2, Mr. Producer.
I am a pro-choice, feminist, sexual assault survivor with a chronic reproductive illness. Donald Trump and his party think I should be punished for exercising my constitutional rights. His rhetoric about women takes us back to a time when we were meant to be beautiful and silent. Meanwhile, 22 years ago, Hillary Clinton declared that women's rights are human rights.
Okay, so you can see that this is a charming young woman. Right, she describes having an abortion as a constitutional right, and people want to stop her. And in the 50s, women were meant to be beautiful and silent. You know, I met my grandmother. She is not silent. My mother is not silent. I'm married to a doctor. She is not silent. She is beautiful. But this idea that way back when men were trying to keep women beautiful and silent, you know, this is Lena Dunham's shtick. And, of course, they tried to use this in order to propel Hillary Clinton to the presidency. Well, the reason that she is in the news is because now she's back. And she is considered the wave of the future for Democrats. She's considered the person who is going to lead them from the wilderness to cultural victory. She's the one who's going to reach out to women. Remember, Donald Trump won white women in this election cycle. Lena Dunham's a white woman. She's the one who's supposed to be driving all of this feminist movement ire against Republicans. Well, over the weekend, Lena Dunham, this cultural figure, this cultural icon, she did a podcast. And on her podcast, she said this, quote, "I always thought that I myself didn't stigmatize abortion. I'm an abortion rights activist. It's a huge part of who I am. But one day, when I was visiting a Planned Parenthood in Texas a few years ago, a young girl walked up to me and asked me if I'd like to be a part of her project in which women share their stories of abortions. I sort of jumped. I haven't had an abortion, I told her. I wanted to make it really clear to her that as much as I was going out and fighting for other women's options, I myself had never had an abortion. And I realized," this is Lena Dunham telling the story, "I realized that even I was carrying within myself stigma around this issue. Even I, the woman who cares as much as anybody about a woman's right to choose, felt it was important that people know I was unblemished in this department. So many people I love, my mother, my best friends, have had to have abortions for all kinds of reasons. I feel so proud of them in their bravery, for their self-knowledge. And it was really important for me then to realize I had internalized some of what society was throwing at us, and I had to put it in the garbage. And then she finished, now I can say that I still haven't had an abortion, but I wish I had. I haven't had an abortion, but I wish I had. This is the lady you just heard speaking at the Democratic National Convention this year, the lady who spent her entire election cycle campaigning for Hillary Clinton, the hot new face of the Democratic outreach to young women. I still haven't had an abortion, but I wish I had. This is why the Democratic Party is destined to continue losing. When you embrace evil, when you embrace the evil of abortion, and not only embrace it, you say it's a sacrament. You treat it as a sacrament. You treat it as an affirmative good. You treat it as something that is decent, something that is holy. You have to wipe away in your own mind. You have to wipe away in your own mind any doubts that you have about the morality of abortion. I mean, that's an amazing thing, folks. It's really an incredible thing. Because here's the thing. Deep down in the soul, this is why I think that conservatism has a future in the country, regardless of what happens in any election. Deep down in the human soul, truth matters. And there's a part of Lena Dunham, this horrible, horrible human being, this writer of girls. There's a part of Lena Dunham who, even down deep in her dark soul, there's a spark of light even there that recognized abortion is a grave evil. And then she determined, as a Democrat, as a leftist, it was important that she stamp that out as fast as possible. It had to be stamped out. And so she would rather have had an abortion so that she would never feel like it was bad to have one. She would rather have conceived a child and then killed the child in the womb so that she doesn't have to feel that there's a stigma around the killing of children in the womb. Now, Dunham has come out and she's apologized for all of this, but every so often the mask for Democrats slips. The masks for the hard left slip. Because they spend all their time talking about abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. They spend all their time talking about America's a wonderful country. And then the mask slips, and you see who they truly are. And in this election cycle, more than any in my lifetime, the mask slipped. They demonstrated who they truly were. People who can't stand the idea of America. People who can't stand the idea of decency. People who think decency is a sin. People who think that human life is to be abused and thrown away. And Lena Dunham doesn't have to know anything about biology. She doesn't have to know anything about reality. All she has to know is that it's important for her to think that abortion is a good thing. And so long as she thinks abortion is a good thing, then all is well. All is well in Lena Dunham world. And this is why Democrats are going to continue to lose. But there is a strategy to all of this. There is a strategy to all of this. And this strategy involves something more than that. Something more than just pushing as hard left as humanly possible. And that strategy is the active alienation of at least half of the American electorate. The active alienation of at least half of Americans. Now, that may sound stupid, right? I mean, how would you ever win an election again if you're alienating half of the electorate? But this is an actual concerted strategy by Democrats. It's something that people on the left want to do. Because here's the thing. Democrats see the American electorate, and they say, okay, right now a certain percentage of the American electorate is white, because Democrats and leftists, they see Americans just in terms of color or in terms of party. They break us all down by group. And so they look at the American electorate, and they say a certain percentage is white. But you know what's going to happen, gang? What's going to happen is that soon, the percentages of the electorate that are the minority, those will be the majority. This is why Barack Obama talks about the browning of America. Soon Hispanics will be 15% of the vote. Soon millennials, young people, those will be 40% of the voters. Soon the percentages of the left vote will increase. So if we just cater to those people, and we make white males, white females, blue-collar folks, if we make those people the enemy, if we wipe out an entire generation of people from even conceiving of decency, if we polarize the electorate, that's how we're going to win. We may not win this time, but we'll win next time, and then the demographics will assure our victory. Now, folks, I have to mention this briefly. If you haven't checked out Levin TV yet, and Mark does his show on Levin TV, you need to take a couple of minutes right now. Go over to crtv.com for $8.25 a month. You sign up for an annual subscription. You get unlimited access to shows like Levin TV and Michelle Malkin, Mark Stein, Steven Crowder. My buddy Steven actually is getting waterboarded today for subscribers, so go help him out. Make sure that he gets waterboarded. I'm supposed to stop by later, watch him get waterboarded. You can watch them whenever you want, ad-free. Give them a call at 844-LEVIN-TV. That's 844-538-4688. Or go to crtv.com right now and check that out. Well, as we continue here on the Mark Levin Show, I want to talk about the next part of the strategy. So part of the strategy is to just embrace the inner evil. Just embrace it all the way. And the next part of the strategy is to take that and spread it out as a method of defense against the evil white people that the Democrats see everywhere. And wait till you hear what the Democrats are doing. Wait till you hear what the left is doing now. MTV has released this video. You're going to want to hear this video because this is the Democratic platform in action. Get ready. It's unbelievable. Mark Levin, show Ben Shapiro in.
Mark Levin.
This is Ben Shapiro in for the great one, Mark Levin. Terrific honor to be here. Okay, so the Democrats, the left, they have a couple of strategies for how they're going to win future elections, and they seem counterproductive right now. But every time Republicans win a big election, everybody thinks Republicans are going to win forever. Every time Democrats win a big election, people think Democrats are going to win forever. So what exactly is the Democratic strategy for the comeback? Because it's easy to get caught up in the whole post-election glow. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that we're never going to lose again. It's going to be fantastic from here for the rest of time. Okay, so here is the Democratic plan. Democratic plan number one, radicalize young people as much as possible. Change their moral compass. Make sure they don't even think of things that are wrong as things that are wrong. Those things are actually to be celebrated. Bad things are to be celebrated. Leftist things are to be celebrated. Abortion isn't supposed to be safe, legal, and rare. It's supposed to be something you celebrate. And that's why they trot out Lena Dunham to talk about how she would love to have an abortion. And then they get kind of embarrassed because you're not supposed to say that publicly, but that's strategy number one. Strategy number two is you take all of the various interest groups, all of the identity politics groups that the left loves to harp on, and then you turn them all against the supposed white majority that elected Donald Trump. Because there's a lot of blue-collar white people who elected Donald Trump. A lot of white people voted for Donald Trump. Therefore, the Democratic strategy is double down on the Obama coalition. See, Obama did the Democrats a real disservice. He really did. He built an Obama-specific coalition. That coalition was a lot of minorities and not a lot of white folks. And the Democrats were okay with that because they figured, look at the groups in America. Look at the demographics. The groups that are increasing are the minorities, and the groups that are decreasing demographically are the white folks. And so if we just bank on the growing demographic, and we target the shrinking demographic, we're going to win from now until eternity. Republicans will never win another election. And it didn't work because deep down, most Americans are willing to hear. I believe this. I know Mark believes this too. Most Americans are still willing to hear truth if somebody is willing to speak truth. But Democrats don't think about truth. It's not an important thing for them. So instead, what they think about is how do we polarize along racial lines? And that's where MTV comes in. So I'm talking as somebody who's 32 years old. And I'm talking about people of my generation. MTV is for people who are 32 years old. It's for people who are 20 years old. Lena Dunham is somebody who everyone my age knows and nobody over the age of 60 knows. That's who the Democrats are targeting with all of this stuff. That's their goal. Steal that population, and then you'll never lose another election. So here is MTV's attempt. Listen to how nasty this is. Here's MTV's attempt to polarize the American electorate along racial lines in order to ensure that this division allows them to win elections. Here's MTV. This is a series of 2017 resolutions that minorities and women have for white people. Evil, evil white people. New Year's resolutions. This is cut 3. Go.
It's about to be a new year. And there's a few things we think you could do a little bit better in 2017.
First off, try to recognize that America was never great for anyone who wasn't a white guy.
Can we all just agree that Black Lives Matter isn't the opposite of All Lives Matter? Black lives just matter. There's no need to overcomplicate it.
Also, Blue Lives Matter isn't a thing. Cops weren't born with blue skin, right? I mean, yeah, they weren't born blue.
Stop bragging about being woke. Stop saying woke.
Learn what mansplaining is, and then stop.
Okay, I can't. Stop it. Okay, I can't listen to these idiots anymore. I just can't. I can't. That was like 30 seconds, and my head is already exploding. First of all, for all of these feminists who keep talking about mansplaining, womansplaining, for those of us who are married, used to be called nagging. Okay, but here we are, talking about the MTV resolutions for white guys, and all of it is about how white people are awful, right? White people don't respect women, and white people are mean to women. Sure, a lot of white people have wives, or a lot of white people are women. Sure, a lot of white men have wives who have careers. Sure, a lot of white men are really great to women, and in fact, the civilizations that have been traditionally great to women have been largely white, so it's not all white people are great to women, not all minority people are bad to women, obviously, but the civilizations that are really great to women historically, those have been civilizations that a lot of white people live in. That doesn't mean, again, that's a cultural thing, that's not a racial thing, but the idea that white people are mean, white people are bad to women, white people are bad to minorities, just inherently, They're inherently bad to minorities. They're inherently bad to women. This reduces people to members of groups as opposed to individuals, and that's a bunch of crap. But that's what they're doing. That's their goal. Their goal is to suggest that it's the white people versus everybody else, and you must be a member of the everybody else. And you're downtrodden, right? America was never great. I mean, that's an amazing line. America was never great. It was never historically great for anyone who wasn't white. Ask Martin Luther King Jr. if he thought that. Ask the millions of black people who have risen up to positions of power they never would have thought possible in any other civilization. Ask Barack Obama if he thinks that, for goodness sake. Ask my folks, ask the Jews if this has been a great civilization for them. This has been the best state, the best nation for Jews in the history of the world. But according to MTV, this place has been terrible for everybody except for white people. So when Donald Trump says, make America great again, all they hear is, he hates black people. This is by design. It's by design. It is not being done simply by coincidence. It's not just them lashing out emotionally. This is done by design, again, to polarize. They're doubling down on the identity politics. Now, they have two strategies after this election. Strategy number one, they could reach out to some of the people they lost. They could reach out to all those blue-collar white workers, and they could say to them, look, here's what we think we got wrong, and here's how we can do better for you. And strategy number two is to continue to alienate all of those people, thinking that the demographics are going to save you. Thinking that the demographics are going to save you. In order to do that, you have to lie to people of minority status in the United States. You have to lie to them consistently. You have to talk about white privilege. You have to talk about how white people run the country for the benefit of white people. You have to talk about how women are condemned to a life of subjugation and slavery and evil here in the United States. You have to talk about how everyone's a victim. You have to break everyone down into a victim group, and then you have to say the great victimizers are all the evil people who voted for Donald Trump. In order to do that, though, you have to lie. And so next, we're going to talk about some of the lies the Democrats have been trotting out, the leftists have been trotting out. 3 hoax stories in 24 hours targeting Americans who happen not to have voted for Hillary Clinton. Unbelievable. I'm Ben Shapiro in for Mark Levin.
Right versus left is right versus wrong. Call Mark at 877-381-3811.
Ben Shapiro here in for Mark Levin, talking about what the Democratic strategy for recovery is. It's just as ugly as you would think it was. I mean, just look at their candidates. I mean, their candidates are horrible people for the most part, so why would it be any shock that their strategy is just as ugly? So there are 3 steps to the strategy. Strategy step number 1. Get rid of all compunction about decency. Decency has to go completely out the window, because we can't have Republicans saying to people, you ought to be decent. Because if people are decent, they don't need the government. So get rid of decency altogether. Instead, we should celebrate sin. We should have Lena Dunham, this idiot russet potato from Girls, talking about how abortion is something you should seek. It's something wonderful, something great. Right, that's step number 1. Step number 2, once you get rid of the decency argument, now you say, well, we don't have anything that holds us together. There's not decency that holds us together. We have no common standards, no respect for one another. So now all that's left is tribe. And there's the good tribes and the bad tribes. And the bad tribes are white people, and the good tribes are all the various minority groups. All the various minority groups. Democrats are banking on those minority groups to carry them to victory. It's why 2020, the chances that they nominate a white male are extraordinarily low. Really, really low, because they have to bend the ear of minority groups. Which brings us to step number 3. In order to convince minority groups in America that Democrats haven't screwed them over, even though Democrats have totally screwed them over, right? Democrats have dominated in minority areas for as long as I've been alive. I was born in 84. They've been dominating longer than that. And minorities, black Americans, they're not any better off economically. Hispanic Americans, living in places like California where I live, they're not doing better economically in California. They certainly aren't, not due to Democratic policy. So you have to tell lies about the tribes. You have to create an enemy, and the enemy is the white folks. The enemy is the white people who voted for Donald Trump. Now, in order to do that, you have to overlook the fact that most white people who voted for Donald Trump are actually rather pleasant. That you can have political disagreements, and you can still be a decent human being. That most Trump voters are normal, everyday people who just go to work and take care of their families and want to be left alone. Same as the people who voted for Bush. A lot of them voted for Obama, for goodness sake. So instead what you have to do is you have to tell lies about those white folks. Those white people have to become the monsters in this little morality play. And so that's why you're seeing all of these hoax stories, and it's a bunch of them. In the last week, a ton of hoax stories. So last week, of course, there's that ridiculous story out of New York where a Baruch college student named Yasmin Saweed, Muslim college student, she claimed that 3 drunken white men yelled Donald Trump and anti-Islam slurs at her on the subway and tried to grab her hijab. And the media just played along with this because the media loves these stories. It confirms everything they think about the Trump supporters. They think all Trump supporters, all of them, are violent and terrible people, and so this confirms it. It was too good to check. And then it turns out, utter, complete horse pucky. And just dropped from the rear end of a horse. And this girl's arrested, it turns out, because she was lying. It wasn't true. There was no evidence to back it up. That's hoax story number 1. Trumpkins, the people who voted for Donald Trump, all those people are inherently Islamophobic. Muslims, vote for us. Minority groups, you are under assault. Hoax story number 2. Today, this is breaking news from the New York Daily News. A University of Michigan student who claimed a man threatened to burn her hijab made up the story and might face charges, police announced Wednesday. Ann Arbor police found numerous inconsistencies in the story while investigating it as an ethnic intimidation case, according to the Detroit Free Press. Investigators eventually determined the entire event did not occur. The student claimed that a white man on an off-campus street demanded she take off her hijab or he would light it on fire. She said he even displayed a lighter and then fled on foot after she complied. When did this happen? She said it happened 2 days after Donald Trump won the presidential election. So clearly, it was Trump in the background somewhere saying, I want you to light that hijab on fire. And the media jumped all over, and false. It's not true. It's not true. It was made up out of whole cloth, and so now the police have decided to dump that case. Here's another one. Hey, Jackson, Mississippi. Associated Press. A Mississippi man arrested in the burning of an African-American church that was spray-painted with the words, Vote Trump, is a member of the congregation. The church's bishop said Andrew McClinton, 45, of Leland, Mississippi, was charged on Wednesday with first-degree arson of a place of worship, said Warren Strain, spokesman for the Mississippi Department of Public Safety. McClinton, wait for it, is African-American. So a black guy who's a member of a black church burned the church and then spray-painted Vote Trump on it. And the media jumped all over it. It was all over HuffPost. It was all over Salon. It was all over the mainstream. This church, oh my goodness, look at this. These evil, evil Trump supporters burning black churches. This is who they are. They are secretly KKK members. They are all David Duke. They are all the alt-right. That's who they are. They're all these people. Not some small group of people are these. Everyone is this. And anyone could be these folks. Anyone could be waiting behind the bushes on your front stoop to leap out and murder you while shouting Trump if you are a person of minority status. And that's the goal in all of this. That's the goal in this. You have to hoax it. You have to hoax it because it's actually kind of hard to find these stories, is the truth. It's hard to find stories of Americans being wildly discriminatory and nasty and violent to people just based on their race because they were Trump supporters. It's actually hard to find those stories. It's not nearly as hard, by the way, to find stories of Trump supporters being abused by leftists. You can find videos all over the place of leftists jumping Trump supporters and treating them violently. And there's a new tape that just came out of this horrible incident where a couple of black youths grabbed a guy out of his car and started shouting about Trump and then actually dragged him with the car. The guy's okay, I guess, but the video came out, and you've seen incidents like that, isolated, but not unverified. But the media report the unverified incidents like it's nothing. And the idea is the more you can portray America as a deeply racist, terrible place, the easier it is to get people to vote for your favorite candidates. Because your favorite candidates, of course, are people who say that people are victims. Now, the victim mentality is something that unfortunately has crossed the aisle in every way. We'll get to some more of this next hour. But the victim mentality, the idea that you are a victim, it's the easiest game to play in all of American politics. Once you say that somebody is a victim, it justifies all of their problems, right? They're poor. Okay, well, you're a victim. Someone's victimizing you. You didn't achieve. Well, it must be that someone's victimizing you. Somebody's targeting you. And then if you say to them, well, wait, no one's targeting you. No one cares enough about you to target you. This is the amazing thing about this kind of politics. Do you wake up in the morning and think, how can I keep that black man down? Of course not. You have your own life. It's not out of the goodness of your heart. It's out of the fact that you have your own life. That's the beautiful thing about a country in which freedom reigns, in which liberty matters. You don't have time to worry about how to stop the other guy based on the color of his skin. Not even because you're a better person, but just because when you are responsible for the results of your own actions, then you better act well. You better act well. So the left has to make up these terrible stories. And then it's very hard to dissuade people. Once somebody thinks they're a victim, it's almost impossible to dissuade them of that notion. Have you ever talked to somebody who thinks they're a victim? Have you ever talked to somebody who feels like they're a victim in their marriage, for example? And say, well, maybe you're doing something wrong too. Maybe this isn't just one side of the coin. No, it's all him. It's all her. I've done nothing. I am a perfect innocent in this scenario. Once somebody believes they're a victim, almost impossible to get them to believe they're not a victim. And then once they think they're a victim, they're looking for instances of like victimization. They're looking for instances where they can be considered a victim. And this is why hoaxes go so far. This is why you can have a case like the Ferguson police shooting with Officer Darren Wilson shooting Michael Brown, where the entire media runs with a lie, an absolute bald-faced lie about hands up, don't shoot, and people buy into it. And if you look at the polls at the time, by the way, what you see is that a vast majority of black Americans believed that Officer Darren Wilson should have been convicted of murder, of first-degree murder. Most white people, by contrast, said, not, he's innocent. They said, we need more information. Why? Because in this particular scenario, white people didn't feel like they were victims, and black people did. Once you think you are a victim, you look for other situations that justify your general sense of victimhood. And so the goal of the left is to convince everyone that they're a victim. And the easiest way to convince everybody that they're a victim is to tell lies about how often you're being targeted. There has yet to be in human history, a tyrannical group, a violent group, a bad man, an evil person, who didn't believe they were the victim. Victimhood actually breeds the notion of evil. The victimhood breeds the idea that you get to be aggressive and evil in response. Because as long as you think you're punching back, you don't actually have to worry whether you're the first guy punching. And that's what the left is attempting to do, interest group by interest group, identity group by identity group. And in order to do that, they have to convince people that individual Americans are bad human beings, and that's their goal. That's their goal. D in New York. You're on the Mark Levin Show. Ben Shapiro here. Go for it, D.
How are you doing, Ben?
I'm doing well.
I just wanted to make a point about just your analysis of things. I think both sides kind of play the same game, because if you're looking at, sure, the left does kind of pander to its constituents, but the right has basically changed its whole platform to pander to its constituents.
Yeah, D, I don't actually disagree with this entirely. I think this is true. I think that the problem with victim politics is that there are going to be a lot of people who think that, hey, look, if victim politics works for the other side, why can't it work for us? And it's one of the things that I see that's ugly in American politics, that you're starting to see people who heretofore believed in the idea that good policy should win, that good notions should win, good ideas should win. They're starting to fall for this. Everybody's victimizing me. I'm a victim too. It's China, or it's Mexico. Somebody's victimizing me. I'm a victim of some nefarious globalist forces. And that's a real ugly game to play, because then you're looking for the strong man to save you from those forces, right? You're waiting for Superman to come down from the sky and fix all your problems. I actually agree with what you're saying, D.
Yeah, and, I just feel like certain parties feel more apt to criticize certain people they feel like they don't need. So, certain news outlets, conservative news outlets, are more likely to criticize groups that they don't think they're going to get, versus certain liberal news outlets feel like they can criticize, the working class guys, you say.
And I will say this, D. I will say this, and I appreciate the call. I will say this. I am a huge fan of intellectual honesty and consistency, a huge fan of it. I don't like identity group politics of any sort. I think identity group politics are disgusting. And I think that if you are trying to target white voters as white voters, or if you're trying to target blue-collar white voters as blue-collar white voters, as opposed to individuals, instead of arguing policy, instead of arguing what's true, what's right, you lie to people and you call them victims, and that makes you more apt to win, I don't think you deserve to win. Maybe it makes you more likely to win, and maybe that's the game that we now all have to play, is who can tell the best lies, who can make everybody feel like a victim the most. But I still believe, and you have to believe, if you believe in the notion of a republic, that truth in the end is going to matter. Well, as we continue here on the Mark Levin Show, a guy who doesn't tell the truth very often, Keith Olbermann, loses what is left of his tiny, tiny mind. We'll play it for you. I'm Ben Shapiro in for Mark Levin.
Mark Levin.
This is Ben Shapiro in for Mark Levin. And I was talking about a bunch of hoaxes from the left, and now it appears that there's another one that may be a hoax, good evidence that this might be a hoax. A Muslim YouTube star who made a hoax video in 2014 showing an NYPD officer stopping him for stop and frisk because he was wearing traditional Muslim garb. He's now claiming that Delta Airlines booted him off a flight from London to New York because he was talking on his phone to his mom in Arabic. And this has been retweeted some 606,000 times. It was pushed out by Brian Stelter at CNN. The entire left is dedicated to the proposition that American companies, they're bad, they're discriminatory, and you are a victim. Vote for the Democrats to help you overcome that victimhood. By the way, this also explains why the left cannot stand the small number of minorities who don't vote according to the left. Because if your entire identity is, I help victim groups, and then a member of the victim group says, wait a second, I'm not a victim. You're not a victim. Nobody's victim. It's imploded your entire identity. Your identity is gone, right? You can't claim to be the defender of all minorities when there are minorities saying, hey, wait, we don't need you defending us. We don't need defense. This is America. Everything's great. Right? It destroys what the left thinks of themselves, and so they have to come up with some solution. The answer is, well, that minority person isn't a real minority. Right? Clarence Thomas isn't a real minority. He doesn't think of himself as a victim. So now the entire left wants to define itself as a victim group. They're all victims now. They're all victims of the Russians or of James Comey and the FBI. And Hillary lost. Someone must have victimized them. It wasn't fate. It wasn't Hillary Clinton being the worst candidate in the history of mankind. No. What victimized them? What victimized them? It's the evil Republicans. And now they must fight back using all measures at their disposal, including lies, including insanity. Keith Olbermann is becoming popular again on the left, which says a lot about the left, because Keith Olbermann has been a nut for years. I mean, he's been he got fired by MSNBC, by Current TV, and then he disappeared for a while, went back to ESPN2, got fired there, I think, and now he's kind of floating around at some obscure channel, and he's decided that in order to up his credibility, he's going to go back in time, steal somebody's suit from 1963, and the square black-rimmed glasses, and that's somehow going to make him appear more intelligent. It did not succeed for Keith Olbermann. So Keith Olbermann explains what he is going to do to resist the Trumpire. Clip 8, Keith Olbermann, go.
Not using one word can be just as forceful as perpetually using another. Never address Trump as president. He is Trump. Just Trump. Never president. The title of president, that we must protect for a happier and more honest time. Resistance means refusal. Resist. Peace.
Peace. His logo, Keith Olbermann. Oh, Keith Olbermann. It is fun to watch these folks implode on themselves. They're struggling now for something to say to people. What should we do now that Trump has won? What should we do now that Republicans are in control? Now, if they were smart, what they would be doing is actually what Bernie Sanders has been suggesting. Reach out, again, to those blue-collar people. Try to bring them back into the fold. Try to explain why their policy preferences are better than Trump's. And they actually have an opening. They actually do have an opening. The opening that Trump's policies are not entirely conservative, right? A lot of Trump's policies are actually Hoover-esque. So they could come in and play FDR. They could say, well, what he's saying is okay, but you should really triple down on that. But they're not doing that. Instead, they're too busy playing the victim. So you have Keith Olbermann stuttering one word at a time. Peace. Resist. 2-syllable words. Important. That's 3. That's one suggestion. They also have Robert Reich doing it. Robert Reich, Secretary of Labor under Bill Clinton. He thinks that we should start a boycott. Leftists should start a boycott of Trump's product. Now, quick note about boycotts, by the way. Boycotts almost never work. Boycotts are economically unfeasible. There are too many people who just don't care. They almost never work. But this is how feeble the Democrats are. They have nothing left here. I mean, they are really falling apart. And so they've been relegated to in the end, they've been relegated to the Donald Trump is a Nazi argument. And so you actually saw over the weekend this attempt by the Huffington Post to suggest that the National Security Advisor, Mike Flynn, went and met with a Nazi party in Austria. It's utter nonsense. It's not true. The party was founded by a Nazi in 1928, and it's changed pretty significantly since then. It's the equivalent of saying Obama was elected by the Slavery Party because the Democratic Party was founded in slavery. But they'll tell any lie to get where they want to go. As we continue here on the Mark Levin Show, Ben Shapiro, we're going to talk about Donald Trump's policy. He's been talking economics and his big stimulus plan. We'll talk about, will Republicans actually stand up to him when he does something wrong, or should they? I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Mark Levin Show.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
This is Ben Shapiro of Daily Wire fame, Ben Shapiro Show podcast, on for Mark Levin, sitting in for the great one, thrill of a lifetime, really appreciate the opportunity. And I have a couple of questions about Donald Trump, but one is really about Trump and one is more about Republican leadership. We can get to a lot this hour. We're going to talk about Trump's stimulus plan, his transportation plan, $1 trillion in spending. We're going to talk about that in just a second. We're also going to get to what's going on with Russia in a little while here. And why don't we start with this? Everybody is very hot and bothered about the $1 trillion spending plan. And when I say hot and bothered, I mean that Republicans don't seem to care. I mean, a lot of Republicans seem to be totally cool with it. Mike Huckabee, who is, I'm trying to put this as kindly as I can, but he says everything that Mike Huckabee says is through the prism of how can I please Donald Trump today. Here is Mike Huckabee pumping Donald Trump's $1 trillion. $1 trillion. Remember, Obama wanted $800 billion in stimulus, and we all kicked up a storm because that's stupid. And now Mike Huckabee says $1 trillion for infrastructure. That's a great idea. We should totally do it. Here is Mike Huckabee, former governor of Arkansas, talking about what brilliant policy this would be. Clip 13, go.
Well, let's first talk about the fact that we really do have probably $2 to $3 trillion in total needs that have been identified by the civil engineers of America. And I know that sounds like, well, let's just go spend a bunch of government money. But, Eric, in some cases, it's the government that has to spend the money to build things like roads and bridges and airports, water and treatment plants. And here's a fact. If you build roads, for every $1 billion that you spend in building a road, a highway, you put 7,900 people to work at the job site. If you start adding the indirect jobs, you're talking about 16,000, 17,000 more jobs. So the best way to get people off of government support is to give them a job.
What? Okay, stop. Okay, sorry. The best way to get people off of government support is to give them a government-paid job? The best way to get people off government support is to give them a government-paid job? And this is basic Keynesian nonsense right here. Well, you know, for every dollar you spend on governmental products, that's $10 that you're going to get back. Absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. If that had been true, the stimulus plan would have been a genius piece of economic wonder. FDR would have revitalized the economy by blowing out the spending. We wouldn't have to worry about our deficits anymore. Hell, we just grow our way out of it by spending our way out of it. If that makes sense to you, take out tens of thousands of dollars on your credit card, spend it on useless garbage, and then see if you're capable of paying back your credit card. See how that works out for you. The way you can tell if something's a boondoggle or not in government land, the way you can tell, very easy litmus test, if they just say the number. If they just say the number, it's a boondoggle. Because think about how you run your business. Think about how you run your life. When you send your wife out, or you send your husband out to go to the market and buy just a carton of eggs, you say, honey, go to the market, buy a carton of eggs, right? What you don't say is, I want you to go out and spend $30 on eggs. You know why? Because you might buy too many eggs. Right? You send them out to get the product. Okay, government, when it comes to government services, like infrastructure, government should be sending out people to buy the product, not dictating the price beforehand, right? If the idea is we need to fix up our infrastructure, then we shouldn't be talking about the size of the infrastructure package. We should be talking about which infrastructure is going to get fixed, and then we determine what we're going to pay for it based on an open bidding process. That's how you would run your business. If you had to fulfill a need, you're a contractor, you got to fulfill a need, you got to have somebody do the plumbing on a house. You wouldn't say, you know what, before we even begin, I'm spending $600,000 on the plumbing. Just telling you right now, we need a $600,000 plumbing package. You wouldn't do that. You'd say, okay, what do we need to build? How much plumbing do we need? Who's going to actually get me that plumbing for the cheapest price and the best product? But when you're talking about government, suddenly people start talking as though the goal of the program is not to fix the infrastructure, it's to spend the money. You know why? Because the goal of this program is to spend the money, not to build the infrastructure. If they actually wanted to build the infrastructure, they would be talking about an infrastructure plan. And we could talk about whether that was good or bad. They wouldn't just be slapping a number on it like $1 trillion and then not telling us what's in it. And we're all supposed to fall forward in shock and awe at the genius of this. We're all supposed to think this is just wonderful, that it's just great. By the way, you know who loves this thing? Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer came out over the weekend, and Chuck Schumer says, quote, "We think it should be large. He's mentioned $1 trillion. I told him that sounded good to me." He said, "We're not going to oppose something simply because it has the name Trump on it, but we will certainly not sacrifice our principles just to get something done." And he said that he thinks that he's going to find common ground with Trump. This is Chuck Schumer. Okay, Chuck Schumer is one of the most radical leftists in the Senate. He's going to be leading the Senate after Harry, the disgusting mobster, Reid leaves. He says, I'm more close to that, to Trump, than I am to Barack Obama or George Bush's position, and so are a lot of Democrats. He agrees with Trump's diagnosis on trade. So Democrats are perfectly happy with this. Democrats are perfectly happy with this program that Trump is proposing. By the way, this doesn't mean every Trump program is bad, and we'll talk about this in a second. It seems to me that the obligation of conservatives, there's an argument to be made during the election cycle that there's an obligation for conservatives to downplay Trump's flaws in order to get him elected. This is not something I thought was necessary. If he's a good candidate, he'll win. If he's a bad candidate, he'll lose. Tell the truth about him. But I understand the argument. Now he's been elected. Hillary ain't part of this anymore. So now the question is, how do you get the policies you want? How do you get the conservative policies we're actually demanding? Because Trump was elected, unlike many of his most ardent supporters claim, he was elected to do conservative things. Because he was elected in response to Republicans and Barack Obama not doing conservative things. It was a reactionary candidacy, and people want to see him do conservative things. I don't think a broad majority of Trump's voters elected him to spend $1 trillion on infrastructure. And you can see he's already moderating on a lot of this stuff. Newt Gingrich is out there pushing the idea that he's going to moderate on the drain the swamp stuff, too. Here's Gingrich talking about Trump really not wanting to drain the swamp anymore. Cut 18, go.
Others might say, you've been working in the swamp, to use language.
Although I'm told he now disclaims that. He now says it was cute, but he doesn't want to use it anymore.
So he doesn't want to use the phrase drain the swamp anymore. I remember when people were chanting this at stadiums, 60,000 people. Drain the swamp. That's what he was elected to do. Are people just going to sit by and say, well, now that he's elected, we don't need to do anything? I thought that was the whole point. And Milton Friedman once said, the goal of politics isn't to elect the right people. It's to make the wrong people do the right things. Regardless whether you voted for Trump or not. Whether you supported Trump or not. Now it's time for him to do the right things. And it's Republicans' responsibility under the Constitution of the United States not to go along with bad policy that violates what the government is supposed to be doing. That violates his constitutional oath. We're not supposed to just go along with things because he's of our party. I don't remember this notion with Bush that you were just supposed to go along. And when we did go along with Bush on the bad stuff, you know what happened? It came back around to bite us right in the rear. When Republicans went along with Medicare Part D, that was a bad move. When they went along with No Child Left Behind, that was a bad move. When they went along with campaign finance reform, that was a bad move. When they went along with steel tariffs, that was a bad move. When they went along with TARP, that was a terrible move. Republicans over and over bent over backwards for Bush. And you know what they got? They got a failed presidency in the end and Barack Obama for 2 terms. If you want something from Donald Trump, now's the time to demand it, Republican leadership. And that's what we demand of you. Because you were independently elected of Trump. You weren't elected on Trump's coattails. In fact, there's a good case to be made that Trump was elected on Republican coattails, statistically speaking. In many states, Trump underperformed the Senate candidates. The fact is, everybody in this system has a role to play in upholding the Constitution. And that doesn't disappear just because you have a desperate desire for Trump to be everything you want him to be. And yet that's what we're hearing. Joe Scarborough, who's of MSNBC fame, who's a confidant of Donald Trump, he's warning Trump. He's warning the Republicans. Don't go too far right. It's too scary. Don't do it. It's too scary. Joe Scarborough, MSNBC, making the case. Clip 17.
Republicans need to look at what happened to Democrats in 1994, after they went too far left for 2 years, what happened to Democrats in 2010 when they went too far left. If they think they're going to be able to go as far right as the cabinet selection suggests they are, they will be wiped out 2 years from now. Let me just say this before they're even sworn in, because I was saying this about 2010. If Republicans go as far right as their cabinet choices suggest they're going to go far right, they will get wiped out in 2018.
This is just utterly illogical. Stop it right there. It's utterly illogical to say this, okay? Right positions and left positions are not the same. Politics is not just a football game, and there's a line of scrimmage, and the closer you get to the line of scrimmage, the closer you get to the middle of the field, the more people you'll win. No, the best policy is what is going to allow Republicans to continue to win. Upholding conservative ideals is what is going to allow conservatives to win, Republicans to win. This idea that you got to govern like Obama in order to maintain your presidency, you got to govern like Bill Clinton, you got to move to the center. This is why people were tired of Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan. This is why people were entirely done with the establishment, because they kept moving to the middle, not the opposite. As we continue here on the Mark Levin Show, we'll talk more about that. Plus, will Republicans actually stand up to Trump, or are they just going to go right along to get along? I'm Ben Shapiro. This is the Mark Levin Show.
Mark Levin.
This is Ben Shapiro in for Mark Levin. If you're looking for a great Christmas gift, by the way, you need to check out Levin TV right now. Take a couple of minutes, go to crtv.com right now, $8.25 a month. Sign up for that annual subscription, unlimited access to Levin TV, Michelle Malkin. My good friend Steven Crowder is getting waterboarded tonight, apparently, for subscription. So go over there and make it worth his while, make his suffering worthwhile. Or don't. I just like watching Steven get tortured. You can watch them whenever you want, ad-free, and give him a call at 844-LEVIN-TV. That's 844-538-4688, or go to crtv.com right now. So everybody is very up in arms. On the right side of the aisle, they seem totally fine, actually, with this $1 trillion infrastructure package. And I'm old enough to I'm only 32, granted. I'm a young buck. But I'm old enough to remember when infrastructure packages, large infrastructure packages, they cost a lot of money, and we didn't know what was in them, and people would just talk infrastructure. And we'd be annoyed by this, and we didn't really like it too much. For example, I remember when a fellow who used to haunt those halls of power at the White House, a fellow named Barack Obama. I'm old enough to remember when Barack Obama said that we had to do something on infrastructure. It was vital, and Republicans said no. Cut 15, go.
The American people have to demand that folks in Washington do their job. Do something. That's my big motto for Congress right now. Just do something. And if they don't like the transportation plan that I put forward, at least come up with your own plan, and then we can compromise. But don't just sit there and do nothing. We don't have time. America's on the move.
America's on the move. It is. It's on the move. Gotta move. Get up. Move. Groove. Jazzercise. Gotta do it. And you know what Republicans said? They said, hell no. Why in the world would we do that? Why would we give you all that money to play with? Is that something we want the government just dumping money into? And now, report from National Review today, Tim Alberta, National Review. Talk about candy-ass Republicans here. According to several members of Congress, there's been informal talk of accepting a bill that's only 50% paid for, with the rest of the borrowing being offset down the road by economic growth. Okay, so they're only going to pay for $500 billion of this. And they're not going to find money in the budget. They're not going to cut anywhere to get there. They're just going to borrow more money. Great! We're going to borrow more money. Sound good? Let's borrow some money. Let's spend that money. Let's run up that deficit. No clear demarcation line between success and failure here. No metric of success. It sounds awesome, right, guys? I mean, it was right. It was when Obama did it. It was great, right, guys? Or no, it was bad. See, I do this thing on my podcast where I actually have a physical shoe, and I take it out every so often, and I hold it up, and I say to people, take this shoe and put it on the other foot. Assume that Barack Obama were doing all the things that Trump is doing as far as infrastructure spending or trade. Would you be okay with it? Would it be cool with you? If not, you should be demanding more from the candy-ass Republicans who refuse to stand up. There's an article in Politico today about what Republicans are afraid of. It says, in early December, Representative Bill Flores made what seemed like an obvious observation to a room full of conservatives at a conference in Washington. Some of Trump's proposals, the Texas Republican caution, quote, are not going to line up very well with our conservative policies. Though he quickly added there was plenty the incoming president and GOP Congress could accomplish together, which seems absolutely reasonable to me. But hell began raining down on him. Breitbart, or Trumpbart, my former employer, seized on Flores' remarks a few days later, called them proof that House Republicans plan to, quote, isolate and block President Donald Trump's populist campaign promises. Populism, by the way, is just a code word for something that Breitbart wants to see done, something Steve Bannon wants to see, something that Trump wants to see but has no actual conservative roots. They call that populist. Because all that populist means is that the people are always right. Guess what? The founders didn't agree. Guess what? Neither does any moral person. No moral human being believes that people are always right, just give them what they want. That's why we're a republic, not a democracy. That's why our officers of government swear an oath not to uphold the will of the people, but to uphold the Constitution of the United States. But populism says, if the people want it, the people ought to get it. This is why you have economists who used to be opposed to Donald Trump's trade policy. Suddenly, the people want it, give it to the people. Doesn't matter if it's totally wrong, just give it to them. A conservative populist blogger for the site Truth Feed, according to Politico, warned Flores on Twitter to get ready for a bleep storm. Sean Hannity jumped in too. This only further riled the impromptu anti-Flores mob, according to Politico. And then Politico says, and this is amazing, first of all, an editor at Breitbart said that people should be afraid of crossing Trump. If any politician in either party veers from what the voters clearly voted for in a landslide election, we stand at the ready to call them out on it and hold them accountable, according to this person. Now, I've stood up to Breitbart before and disagreed with them, and you know what? I'm still alive, and it's okay. We can have disagreements. But people are apparently so frightened that they're not standing up anymore. People are so scared. They're so scared of the blowback, they don't know what to do. What are they going to do? Oh, no. They might say bad things about me on a website. Oh, no. According to Politico, all these Republicans are so scared. They're scared that Trump's going to shame them, or Trump's going to say mean things about them, or Breitbart's going to write mean things about them, or some people might not like it because they're not supporting Trump sufficiently. Guess what, guys? That ain't your job. That is not your job. Your job was to come in and to represent not only your constituents, but to represent the constitutional role of government. And this doesn't mean disagree with Trump all the time. Hell no. When Trump does good things, I want McConnell to ram it through. I want McConnell and Ryan to ram it through. I just don't believe that either Trump should be a lackey of McConnell and Ryan, or McConnell and Ryan should be lackeys of Trump. Everybody should be fighting for the same thing. They should all be fighting for the best conservative constitutional principles available. And if you're a little intimidated by one website, then maybe you shouldn't be in Congress. Just a thought. If you're a little intimidated by some Twitter feeds, maybe you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. Because your job is to be in that kitchen and withstand the heat, particularly on principles that matter. Now, as we continue here on the Mark Levin Show, I want to talk about an area where I think that Donald Trump can improve and should improve and may, in fact, be able to improve. Ben Shapiro in for Mark Levin.
This is the nation's town hall meeting, and you can join in at 877-38...